Why are there so many podcasts about Tottenham? Do I want to know why? They might contain insight, but mostly delusions. If I hear one more, I might die. They don't like Levy.
Hello and welcome back to the internet's most dangerous Spurs podcast about Spurs podcasts, Poddenham Podspur, and it is the most dangerous Spurs podcast today because I am joined by Greg, aka Skipjack from Wheeler Dealer Radio, making his triumphant return to podcasting.
Yes, I feel incredibly dangerous. It's been so long. Everyone's better look out.
All that danger bottled up inside you, you know.
Exactly.
Got to spray in danger everywhere. We've been working on this. I know.
No, it's great. It's great. I love it. I love
yeah.
it. Love inappropriate intros that don't go well. It's been too long. I missed you.
I've been waiting to get cancelled. Yeah, thanks for coming on. We've been talking about this for a while. I'm really interested in talking to somebody who's got more of a sort of a, no offense, backwards reflection on their podcasting career.
No,
you know?
that's fine.
It's
That'd
like
be
a
great.
totally different feeling to being in situ as a podcaster, like actively screaming into the void every week, and it is mostly screaming.
Yes.
Before we get into it, just for the people who don't know you, introduce yourself, your Spurs story, explain yourself.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. My name's Greg. I go by the name Skipjack on the internets. I used to write for Cartilage Free Captain, which is how I sort of got into podcasting. My Tottenham story is not that interesting. It's a little funny. So I got into soccer because of the 2010 World Cup, which if you talk to anyone who has been into soccer for a long time, you kind of get looks when you say that because it was apparently not a very good World Cup. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I got really into it for the first time. I really, I played soccer when I was a kid, but, I, like most Americans, I didn't really stick with it when I got into high school, which I don't know what the British equivalent of high school is. So, I really got into
mines, I believe. We're all sent to the mines.
Yes. The coal pits in Wales, I think is the equivalent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got really into it and I started sort of hunting for a team. And oddly enough, at first, I think I've told the story in various places before. My first thought was like, because I like wrestling, is like, I'll root for the bad guys. I'll root for Manchester City, which is like rooting for the $1 Million Man or something. And by coincidence, the first game that year was City versus Spurs. And I don't know if you remember this in 2010, but like the way that game went it was really sort of Harry Redknapp Spurs in their full flow. Except Joe Hart just saved everything. But City couldn't get out of their own half. Spurs looked great. Gareth Bale was awesome. Luka Modric was awesome. It was really fun to watch. And I was kind of went from like, I'll root for City to like, who's this team? And then like so many Americans, I think I'm very sort of a type of American Spurs fan, which was like, we made the calculus of like, what's the most fun English team that can also go places that doesn't make you look like a glory hunter. Or a fair weather fan, as we would say over here. And like many Americans, that calculus was Tottenham. A few years ago, I think like Villa and Everton were kind of flirting with that status, but by 2010, it was Spurs. So there's just a lot about the club that appealed to me. You just learn a lot about them, like the tradition of attacking football, their sort of historical, like I don't want to say also ran status, but it's very they're a club that like they've had some. Like, my sort of number one team is the Orioles, which is an American baseball team, which anyone who's listening to me is where we talk about, and it's not similar in terms of personality. But they have that like elements of their past that you can be really proud of, but also some comical levels of failure. But it's not like rooting for like Everett or Sunderland or something who's like, won one thing ever. It's like, there is some like sort of proud history there, which I think Tottenham fans have. So it was an easy club for me to relate to. They had, everyone who's listening to this knows what kind of players we had in 2010. And, Van der Vaart, I think was actually the first Tottenham player that I like really fell in love with because he just had all that flair and he was fun. And also, I don't think I appreciated this at the time. He really enjoyed being at Tottenham, and I think I sort of cottoned onto that as well. But yeah, that's my Spurs story. I guess if you want to hear about how I got into podcasting, I kind of fell into the commentariat at Cartilage Free Captain, which is the SB Nation Spurs blog.
Great blog, by the way.
Yeah. Kim McCauley was running it at the time. And at the time there was, I think it's sort of fallen off in the years since, or at least I don't engage with it as much anymore. There was a really thriving sort of like comment section on all the posts where people just talk to each other and just hijack posts and talk about weird stuff.
Yeah, Dustin does a great job now, but
Yeah.
the commentariat is definitely different. I mean,
Mhm.
the bacon sandwich jokes, all sorts. I was on there too.
Oh, that
briefly.
was
yeah.
Those were back in the day. I mean, we talk about. I mean, it would get me canceled now, but when Van der Vaart was there, it was like if we weren't losing a game, someone would post a picture of his wife as like the halftime goddess, to like turn our luck around. We made. I think I was one of the first people making weird Harry Kane jokes on the website. I wrote a whole.
Not the only weird joke you made on cartilage.
Yeah, I made a lot of. I like weird humor, but I wrote a whole like before I actually wrote for the site. I wrote like a whole thing about Harry Kane traveling through time, and this is I think before his Leicester loan, so it was like very early. I think Americans are very tuned into like prospects, so that was something that we were always I think from being baseball fans, we were always very aware of like who's coming up. Like Tom Carroll was like a very big thing on the site for a very long time. But yeah, I sort of got into that eventually, and I made a lot of great friends, many of whom I would later do the podcast with, and people I've become very good real life friends with since then, which is very cool. And then eventually I got sort of dragged into writing for the site, and that eventually turned into the podcast, doing Wheeler Dealer Radio.
Yeah, back when people were really excited by the concept of a blog, yeah.
Yes,
like I can write, I can get my thoughts out online.
Yes.
What do you know about the early days of Cartilage Free Captain and how Kim and Brian stood that up?
I came in a little bit after that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was like the early days where there was like 20 commenters, and they were really sort of just running it on their own. There was a guy named Brian Mechanic who was also helping them back then, who, I mean, I'm sure some people on this will remember his calculator watch, which was a joke. He posted a picture of dressed as like a Tottenham player for a Halloween party. And he posted a picture of himself standing there, and it's like him in a Spurs jersey with like a calculator watch and some incredibly bored looking girl next to him at some college. I think it was a Michigan party.
That was my plan last year for Halloween. I was definitely, I had this like DIY Europa League trophy, and I was going to walk around.
Yeah, see, that's good. Yeah. That's good. My son just dresses up as baseball players, probably soccer players now. But yeah, it was one of the sort of, I think, initial success stories of sort of the SB Nation soccer world.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know Kim really made her bones. I think back when you like really had to have like crazy illegal streams, she had like a really encyclopedic knowledge of like, she would have it be able to tell you something about like Sandro, when we bought him and no one knew who the hell he was.
And of course, she's writing the transfer flow now. Which
really
showcases that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does a great job on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she ran it back then. I came in, I think, the first, because I think it was after that World Cup. There was kind of an influx of Americans, and even like people like Ben who joined in that influx. But they've been soccer fans for a much longer time. I think the Premier League really just had a breakthrough that year, and a lot of us found the blog sort of right after the 2010 season.
It was that big NBC deal. That's whenever I speak to American Spurs fans over here, that usually that gets mentioned like once every 1 and 2.
I think it predates it a little bit. I don't remember the exact timeline, because I definitely spent a year or two watching on Fox Soccer, which was like when I saw Fox Soccer, it was the games of the week. You'd be lucky if a team like Spurs was on, not like if you were a West Brom fan or something, but you'd be lucky if a team like Spurs was on. And then they would have just like, it always drove me crazy because they had like the rights to the Copa Libertadores, but they would only put it on for like the Spanish channel, the Deportes. But like on the regular channel, it would just be like, here's the Manchester United game from this week. They would just replay Manchester United games all the time. And I just remember finding it intensely frustrating when I was trying to sort of like get into soccer. And then they would air those like rivalry documentaries, which I found very engrossing when I was new to soccer, because I find the history of world soccer in general was one of the things that really got me hooked. But in retrospect, I could watch them all, and it's all just some version of some working class person in some language saying like, oh, it doesn't matter if we lose every other game in the season. If we win this game, it's a success. And it's like, whether it's like Benfica Sporting or Celtic Rangers or Tottenham Arsenal, it was always like the same interviews with the same people outside the grounds. But
to be honest, I take it right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I have a greater appreciation for it now than I used to.
Yeah. So how would you describe Wheeler Dealer Radio to somebody?
I don't know if it started as this because we took it over. Like there was another version, like I said, with Kim and Brian, and it just kind of I can't even remember why it died off. I think people just got busy, and we took it over as like, frankly, our jobs were just getting a little busier, and we didn't write for the site. Me and Ben, my friend Ben Daniels, who also did the podcast with me, we kind of wanted to contribute, but we didn't have as much time to write as we used to, and this seemed like a great way to um, contribute to the site and B, talk about Tottenham without having to actually sit down and like write. So I would say eventually it became a Tottenham podcast that's primarily about 3 or 4 people who are friends with each other hanging out, and just shooting the breeze about Spurs. I would also like to say that, and I don't know if every American podcast falls in this way, a lot of American fans do. I'd like to say we were self-aware enough to like, I think we appreciated the club's history and the culture that surrounded the club, but I don't know. Maybe the best way to put this is we wouldn't sing songs in a British accent would be the best way I could put it. We had a certain, I think, level of self-awareness about who we are and how we were coming to this, which certainly evolved over time. But yeah, a self-aware American podcast with 3 or 4 friends just shooting the breeze about Spurs, which is not a very good elevator pitch, I understand. But
no, man, as a Brit living in America, like it's like nails on a chalkboard. So thank you for that. For not.
Yeah, there's a certain. It's hard to describe because I definitely was like this at first, but there's a level of like you want to appreciate the culture, you like to immerse yourself in the culture, but there's certain elements where it's like, the limit to which I will engage in like geographically specific North London trash talk is like I just realized that's not my lane, which I respected if it is. Like if you are from England or London or North London, I get it. Like, but there's a level of cosplay I'm just not going to engage in, because I feel like I can't do it. I feel like it's disrespectful to people who actually feel that way.
But you got to do your own thing and take your own experiences, and that's what I always love about listening to American pods. Talking about Spurs is because you have all those references. I mean, you talked about the Orioles a few times, Maryland represent, etc.
Yeah, I love it. You guys use the Maryland flag more than I do, so I appreciate that down at Montgomery County.
I'm just trying not to get deported.
Well, that's a good way to keep Westmore on your side, the governor of Maryland.
Yeah. I always enjoy it because there are all these references, like you mentioned earlier about baseball and prospects, and like I feel like that's a layer that's added in that you're not going to hear from English podcasters so much talking about Spurs. Another one would be like the concept of a project, which I feel like Brits have come around to more recently, but like you listen to the Americans and they're all fully behind the idea, and I like that a lot. It's like
that's because we assume certain consequences aren't going to catch up with us, which isn't the case these days, but
would be all right. Yeah, the other thing I liked about Wheeler Dealer Radio was you guys seemed like you were having fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's because now I'm listening to, hours a week of people slowly going insane.
Yes. It's brutal.
It's brutal. It really is. It's tough.
Danny Kelly just like popping blood vessels.
I mean, he's a guilty pleasure.
Yes.
But yeah, because you said your friends having, chatting amongst yourself, having the conversations you probably normally have anyway, without a camera recording or a microphone rather. And yeah, you were just having fun. The in-jokes were coming in. You were, responsive to your audience. It was great. It's a great podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think that was the real motor of the podcast for a long time. I mean, there was a period. I mean, we can talk more about sort of the life of the podcast at a certain point, but there was a period where we were doing the podcast. We all had sort of like the right level of workload at our jobs where, what we had to be prepared for the next day was okay. There was a time that was probably, I didn't engage in the healthiest habits, not in terms of behavior, but in terms of in terms of behavior, but not in the way that might sound, where my future wife and I were in a long distance relationship. She was in med school in New York and I was still living in Baltimore. And so I had a period where it was like, oh, well, I'm living like a bachelor who's not trying to meet women. So
you
it's
call
like,
that
what do
long,
I do?
by the way? That's like 2 hours on the Amtrak.
Yeah, no, it's not that long, but it's like 3 hours. It's like 3 hours. It's 3.5 hours.
It depends whether you can afford the Acela or not, but
yeah, no, which I couldn't at the time. But it basically led me to do like things like podcasts with my friends where we'd like record a podcast about Tottenham and then we just like hang around and bullshit for like 2-3 hours afterwards while we're drinking. So it's like literally, it really was literally like hanging out with your friends, you know. And that's really the reason I think it lasted so long. It was a good hang. I think we all enjoyed each other's company. We ended up. We've done. I mean, I see Ben not infrequently because he's got some familial reasons that he's up in. I live in New York now. He comes up here occasionally. When I lived in Baltimore, his job brought him to DC occasionally. My wife's family's from Atlanta, where Ben's based, so I'd see him when I go down there. Brian, I would see when he comes up to New York. We did one trip to Europe together where we actually hung out with Wendy from the Extra Inch. And we had another one that we Brian had to drop out for personal reasons, but we did another trip a few years ago with some of the Cartilage Free Captain Extended Universe, like Michael Cayley, my friend Vince, Rob, who did the podcast for a while. So yeah, no, we're all, we're good friends. We like to hang out. We like to see each other. It's, it really was, that was the engine of the podcast. It was like 3-4 guys, depending on at what point in the podcast you listen to us, who just, like, we're all Spurs fans and liked hanging out with each other. So
yeah, question about Michael Cayley. How much are you responsible for him climbing to the top of the statistics and tactical
not at all. I'm responsible for him doing a podcast with Mike Goodman, who I used to get drinks with when I worked in DC. But I think his experience doing, because if you remember the way Wheelie the Radio started, it was me and Ben, and we had rotating Cartilage Free Captain guys, and Brian wanted to do it again, so we got him in, and that's how we became friends with Brian, or better friends with Brian, because we knew him from the site. And then Michael was one who we are also friends with, but we became much better friends with him because he did the podcast with us. I think it was for like 2 years, maybe. He was a regular. Yeah, so he, I think, got a taste for podcasting and got that sort of itch to scratch from us, but he was doing the tactics and stat stuff. I mean, he was doing that on the website before we hijacked him for our podcast. So
I mean, that's, you can talk shit about the internet as much as you like, and there's plenty to talk shit about, but there are these genuine connections that people form on various different sites and places and podcasts, and it's one of the things about Spurs culture. We're all in this hell together.
It's really great. I have a lot of good friends that I've become. I have a lot of real life friends who I've become real life friends through being a Tottenham fan and writing about and podcasting about Tottenham on the internet. And I have, even more like sort of positive casual acquaintances who, I don't know, that's a weird term, friendly acquaintances who I will like have a drink with if I'm in town, or see occasionally if they're in town. So, I mean, it's been really, as much as we talk about how Twitter is a hellhole I mean, obviously it is now, but how it used to just be a regular hellhole as opposed to what it is now. And, how uptight Bluesky can be. I mean, I've made a lot of just great friends from being a Spurs fan. And, I don't want to say I never regret being a Spurs fan, because that's not true. But, I've certainly, I've largely had a very positive experience from being a Spurs fan. I made a lot of great friends that way.
Yeah, just rude some life choices every now and then. I think it's understandable.
Exactly.
So I was trying to place this. Was Wheeler Dealer Radio the first American Spurs podcast? I feel like it must have been.
I can't imagine it was.
I'm trying to think what would have competed with, like, United Spurs of America or something started afterwards.
I think we predated them, and there were a lot of like. There probably was one. I feel like we were prominent for a while.
Yeah.
We took a hit in terms of listenership because we just weren't promoting it, because it just became our hangout.
It's a lot.
And
it's a lot
there was some,
people don't appreciate that. It's a lot to try to keep a podcast like in the eye of people.
Yeah. And then also we got like some of SB Nation's algorithm shit got like really whacked at some point, and which really hurt us. But yeah, I think we were the most prominent American one for a while. I know there's a lot now, like Tottenham Depot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million Tottenham podcasts now. I know probably the most prominent American when I started becoming a Spurs fan was when I don't know if your listeners remember this, but the Fighting Cock had an American on when they started
season 1. I speak to Flav
Chicago
about
Dan,
him.
I think.
Yeah, Chicago Dan.
Yeah, so that was the guy I would have remembered. But I'm trying to think now, because I remember there was just a lot of like cranky old men, like the Spurs show, I think. And then it's
friend of the show, Mike Lee. I'm just going to say that Greg's opinions do not reflect Poddenham Podspur.
I think in the late 2010s, it took there was a much more hard shift towards like journalist driven Tottenham podcasts. But yeah, I guess we were the most prominent American one for at least a while there. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, you must have been. I mean, I listened to you even when I was living in England still.
Mhm.
Probably the previous iteration before you took over, and then, you came in and I
Yeah,
thought about it and I decided to continue.
there you go. Way to hang in there.
But yeah, I mean, I was listening back to some of your old pods, and it's man, it's so nice. It's like taking a time machine back to a happier time.
It's funny because I was thinking about when we talked about doing this, just the life of the podcast, and it's like, God, we didn't. It's actually something that really, like my interactions with English fans was. I got better at understanding English fans as time wore on, both as a podcaster and as a Tottenham fan. But
And also linguistically,
yeah, that too. I could actually pick out a few accents now. But it's funny because one thing that always drove me a little nuts when I became a Spurs fan, there were certain things I didn't understand. Like I remember the Fighting Cock was really hostile to Harry Redknapp in a way that I didn't understand because I was so new to soccer and new to that environment. But yeah, it was it's very interesting because there's this sort of like level of doom and gloom and stuff that took me like a while to get used to, which I think I would recognize if like you put it in a baseball or football context, American football context.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to get used to, and like I would judge it a little bit. I still judge it a little bit if I'm being totally honest, because I think there's a lot. Like I take a little bit of umbrage with with a lot, at least over the course of time, a lot of the criticism of Daniel Levy, who ultimately deserves a lot of blame for where we are now. But there was a point where I feel like we would finish sixth and Spurs fans would be acting like what's happening this year was happening. And, that always struck me as a little strange, but I'm rambling. Sorry.
No, go for it. I mean, the crazy thing about Daniel Levy now is that people are absolutely recontextualizing what they said 6 months ago.
Well, it's the thing about Levy that's so crazy is I think there's a real argument that if you go back to 2015, there's no chairman in world football who did a better job than Daniel Levy, for all his faults and idiosyncrasies. Like until about 2015, until Tottenham really started to break through with Pochettino. I mean, he took that club. I mean, we were not. I mean, the kind of shit we're dealing with now was on the table before Daniel Levy took over. And it was always just kind of weird to me because there was all these, it felt like Chicken Littles around Spurs when it was like, I don't know, at least until the Premier League got way better post-COVID, like it felt like Levy put like a real hard floor under like sort of what this team, was going to do every year. Like it was like European qualification was like, excuse me, if we were in the Europa League, like that's a bad year. Or if we're fighting for a Europa League spot, that's a bad year, and clearly not the case anymore. I think he clearly didn't adapt with the times. But, I was, whenever Spurs fans talk about getting rid of Levy, there was always a part of my brain which was like, grass ain't always greener, and that's not entirely fair because we're living with a lot of the problems Daniel Levy left us right now. But also, I think Daniel Levy would have fired Thomas Frank in December. So
good God, yeah, and I wish we had. Anything you want to say about the current state of Spurs? Yeah, give you a soapbox. I know you're online.
What could I say about the current state of Spurs?
Do you like it? Are you enjoying
the bubonic
this?
plague?
Yeah,
it's terrible. It's awful. It's I'm sitting at work having like anxiety attacks, like because of fucking. I have to follow like I resent it so much that I have to follow what Nottingham Forest and fucking West Ham are doing in the table, and not because they're playing City and maybe that has like an effect on European qualification. I'm worrying about a fucking relegation battle. It's like I resent it. I hate it so much. There was
sorry, by the way, I just used to joke that I didn't give a shit about anything below Aston Villa.
yeah,
no,
man.
That's definitely
like,
us.
It's there was a story. The stories came out like earlier this week about like who might be our new director of football next year, and I like did what I would normally do, which is like you just sort of like think about like, oh, what's that going to look like? What could that mean for Spurs? Then you realize you can't really think about that because what if we get fucking relegated? And I got so angry. Like I said, what could you say about this team that hasn't already been said about the bubonic plague? It's awful, and I wish it was over.
I think the thing that stresses me out most is with football, I can normally project forward, right? And Spurs has always been relatively a stable presence in my life. I was too young to really remember and experience the 97 relegation stuff. I was like 11. So it's always been this like ever present, and you can kind of rely upon them. Okay, this season sucked, but we've always got next season. We'll still be in the Premier League. This is absolutely coin flip. I don't know what we're going to be doing. I can't take any solace from it, and it's fucking mad.
Every week you're like, we're too good to go down. Like, we have too many good players. The opponents are too bad. We're going to figure this. We're going to scrape by and it'll be fine. And then you watch them play and it's like, fuck, like, you know, you're standing there. It's this mix of we're terrible and nothing's going our way. Like, I mean, like that first goal against Fulham is like our season in a fucking nutshell. It's like, on the one hand, we're getting hosed and that's bullshit and it should have been chalked off. On the other hand, it's like, shouldn't have let that happen. Shouldn't have let that happen. How do you leave that guy that open? Where is fucking Vicario? Like, it's, you know, it's just like, it's, oh God, this fucking team. They're terrible. I think one thing I don't miss about podcasting is just having to like think about this kind of shit every week. Like, I mean, it's tough churning out content every week about a team, but when they're playing, like, I can't imagine. We never, I mean, this is why we stopped in a lot of ways last year was, like, what were you going to say about that team? Like, when they have those league matches, like, it was terrible to watch. And even at least last year, there was like a sort of reason for it that you could stomach, but it still was like you would watch that team in the league and just get angry. And, you know, it's not like, at least last year you could do this, but like, you know, when I watched my baseball team, the Orioles, they had a losing season for 14 years in a row. It sucked. But you could just tune out. There's a certain point because it's like, all right, fuck it, season's over. They'll try to figure it out next year, even if you didn't have a lot of faith. But like, you know, you're just terrified because there's not enough cushion this year, and we're bad. And oh, God, it's awful. Sorry, everyone's heard this before from different people. I'm sure they don't need to hear it from me.
Nah, this is why we snuck it into the middle of an interview. It's like a Trojan horse of depression. There's such a cognitive dissonance at the moment. Like you said, like you rock up and you think, okay, these teams are shit. Our team we're Spurs, right? We're just good. We're a good team. We just won the Europa League, and then you turn up and it's like watching, like it's like children playing.
Yes.
Like nobody knows where they're supposed to be. Nobody can hit the ball to each other. It's either too fast or overhit, or it goes out of bounds, and it's just like, oh, out of bounds. What the fuck am I saying? Goes out of goes off the field. And yeah, it's just really confusing.
It's rough, man. Yeah. It's so bad, and it's just like, I mean, you just wonder how it got this bad, and it's the thing that also gets my goat is like, I think I tweeted or skeeted, whatever we're calling it, on Bluesky earlier today about this. I was fairly late to like, we got to fire Frank, because I thought we could just muddle through the season, fire him in April or May, and like fucking hire Pochettino or whoever. Yeah. I was wrong about that. But I think every Spurs fan was like pretty concerned about this since at least December, if not earlier.
I think November.
Like my friend,
when did we play Chelsea? Like when we
November?
Yeah, it was like October, November, somewhere around.
No, October. I know my friend Vince, who has hated Frank since the moment we signed, and you know, I thought he was being excessively negative, but kudos to him. He was dead on the whole time. He's wanted Frank fired since like October was when he like was like, I'm not going to be reasonable about this, and he was right. And I get really frustrated when I see all these media people who like this week are like, oh man, Spurs should be concerned. It's like, yeah, no fucking shit, Jonathan Wilson or whoever. Like, you know, like we Spurs fans have been kind of yelling about this, and what bothers me is there were all these pundits being like, oh, like I couldn't believe how many. It really got my goat hearing these national pundits talk about like, this isn't going to affect Thomas Frank's career. Like it's Tottenham. What are they? And it drives me up the fucking wall when I hear that, because it's like, first of all, Thomas Frank got us into the point where we're in a relegation battle. Like, fuck that guy. I don't care how poorly he was backed. I don't care how bad the transfer policy was. Like, you should not be in a fucking relegation fight with Tottenham Hotspur. I don't care how many injuries there are or whatever.
We had relegation form, at least performances, before people got injured.
Yeah,
you can't tell me that was good football at the start of the season. No,
it's been terrible. It's been terrible, and just hearing these pundits be like, "Oh wow," it's like after acting like Spurs fans were unreasonable, because I think at a minimum we were all getting kind of unhappy with how things were going in October. I don't think any of us thought it was going to end up here, but not all of us at least. But
I mean,
anyway,
all right. You made a pro wrestling reference earlier, so I'm going to drop one that I've been thinking about recently,
Great.
which is the death of WCW. It just reminds me of that, where it's not one event. It's not like one thing like the finger poke of doom or something else. It's just these series of stupid decisions, like not signing anybody of quality in January, like not firing Thomas Frank early enough, like sacking Ange potentially, like it's not having a left back.
Well, it's like, I think the Extra Inch did this a week or two ago. Like, you could just go back. Like, if you really feel like it, it's like you could go all the way back to like the transfer window where we didn't sign Jack Grealish, or even further if you feel like it. Excuse me. Yeah, it's just like it's bad decision after bad decision. And what that does is it leaves you vulnerable when things just stop going your way. I mean, they don't go your way. One thing I painfully learned from following a bad baseball team for 14 years is like you make your own bad luck in a lot of cases. Like, you're not able to take advantage of things. You make mistakes. Like, people aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and it sucks, but it happens. Yep. And when you're this bad, you just are putting yourself in a situation where it's just like you just can't afford it. And it's like you look at it today. I mean, the Fulham game is the perfect example where I think, Fulham probably should have scored like 4 or 5 goals in that game. But at the end of the day, like, and we don't know because it's, like a butterfly flaps its wings and like aliens invade or whatever. But, if Spurs are bad, but they're in bad in such a way where that goal, not getting that call on that first goal, was like debilitating for them. And you could see it after the goal. Like, they played really poorly because they got punched in the dick, and there's a squad of players who aren't ready for a fight. And, it's just like they're not in the position to absorb these body blows right now and like get away with it, which is what we were able to do last year. I mean, obviously there's, we don't necessarily have to get in the Ange discussion, but like, like that was a calculated decision as opposed to like, this is just shit happening to us. But the reason they made that decision last year was like, oh yeah, we're not going to get relegated, like, because there's such a gap. This year it's just bad shit's happening to us and we just have no cushion or ability to absorb it.
So podcasting highs and lows.
Sure.
Look, I'm an amateur. I don't transition. No,
we don't believe in transitions on Wheeler Dealer Radio, so that's fine with me.
No, I think you're spot on with all that. It's you do make your own luck. We haven't done it, and I agree.
Oh, we have made our own luck. It's just bad luck.
Yeah. Well, you can't do much about. Well, you can. Wilson Odebear doing his ACL again.
Who knows? That's the thing. I'm guessing there's something we're doing wrong there, but it's like, and that was like the thing that like, was it Ange running him into the ground? Or are we just unlucky? Like, what's going? Are we not well stacked enough? It's probably all the above.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's tasering Scott Hall. It's
everything.
It's Bash at the Beach. It's hiring Vince Russo.
It's 4 or 5 years of just bad decisions stacking on top of each other. And that's before you even get into like, the people at the top are making bad decisions, and that's just going to catch up with you sooner or later.
Definitely does. Chelsea. On the plus side, though, more championship games next year will give more content for podcasters. What's that, like 107 games or something? It's like a baseball season.
Don't even like. Can you imagine how many guys are going to get hurt playing in the championship next year? Like,
you mean with our squad of cloggers and journeymen?
Jesus Christ.
Hey, there's a lot of people out there saying it might be good for us. It's driving me nuts. I
hate those people. It is not good for us.
You get to play some kids. Mikey Moore will tear up the championship.
Oh my God. You can't even tear up Scotland, man. It's like, I mean, like, I'm not saying there isn't like an advantage to maybe having a hard reset. Like, there's probably some good things about that, but it's like, no, you're having to dig yourself out of a huge hole. It's going to suck for us to watch. You're not going to be able to enjoy this shit because Arsenal fans are going to be like pissing down their leg on us.
I don't even care about them anymore. It's happening. It's happening. I've lived through it before. It's fine. Win the quadruple. I don't give two shits.
Oh God. I want us to get out of it and hopefully like find a way to dig out of this hole, but we'll see. Whatever. It's fucking just beat Palace tomorrow, please. Just fucking beat Palace tomorrow.
I've got no confidence.
Oh, I have zero confidence. Like,
anyway, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great.
I mean, so where do I want to go with this? Let me think. I'll edit this later.
Highs and lows. You want to just
Yeah,
go there?
let's just go on the highs and lows. I can't be bothered to edit that. We'll keep
Yeah,
it in.
sure.
People can
Whatever.
see.
That's see, this is the Wheeler Dealer Cut Radio way. So
Yeah.
you're embracing your guest history. So
It's just making you feel comfortable.
yeah, I appreciate it.
People can see how the sausage is made.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like what we talked earlier a bit about the extra inch guys, and obviously you linked up with them back in 2020. Didn't you go scouting together as well?
Yeah, yeah, I have a kind of funny relationship with them because I was sitting on a bus back from New York in like 2014. It was probably right before we started the podcast, and I think I've told Wendy this story. He tweeted something about like he didn't like that Spurs were wearing like their yellow jerseys at like a home preseason game or something, which I like was much more nasty about than I should have been. But I thought it was like, oh, silly British pearl clutching, and he was like, it wasn't a nasty exchange, but I remember it being like kind of stupid. And I think I had a similar exchange with Barty once about like the North London Derby or something, and like all fans are the same, and he was like, that's not like stupid Americans is what they think. This is much earlier. And then like much later on, I think we became friends because Wendy really liked our podcast, which I was a little like, I'm always a little surprised to learn when people who are especially more successful people than me like our podcast. And
I was just listening to a pod of yours, by the way, and you referenced
Mhm.
Wendy crashing his car while listening to you.
I forgot about that. Yeah. So we became friendly, I think, around when my son was born. So this would have been during the pandemic. And a bunch of our friends got like, including led by our friend Vince, who used to work for Carlos True Captain, and he used to guest on the pod occasionally. He organized a trip because we were all getting cabin fever, like everyone during the pandemic, and we were all like, "Oh, what if we did like a bachelor party, but not a bachelor party? Like, what if we do a boys' trip as soon as it's over?" And we all were like, "Let's go to Lisbon." And in the planning, he just like offered, like, he invited the extra inch guys, and Wendy was the one who was able to take us up on it. So we all ended up, except for Vince, who got COVID, which was awful.
Yeah.
But we all went to Portugal, and like, what would it have been? Conte was still at Spurs. It would have been, I think it was 23. I think it would have been 23. And we ended up we went to a sporting match against whatever the team that I think Marcus Edwards originally went to.
Oh,
When
God.
he went to
Yeah.
Vitoria, something or other.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. It was really super. I mean, Lisbon's a super fun town, and we saw that match, and we saw Pedro Porro, and it was after those Champions League games where we desperately needed like a right back, and everyone made the joke of like, this Porro guy's cool. Why don't we just sign him? And we saw him up close in the match, and we were all like, oh, he's kind of impressive, and he's really attacking. Let's go get this guy. And then like 2 months later, we were like linked with him, and so our big scouting trip. That's the thing. But that was like that was a really fun time, a really fun trip. And I mean, going to see Sporting that stadium's awesome. And it was great hanging out with those guys. I think the camaraderie was sort of the big high of the podcast. Like, I really just enjoyed talking to my friends about this and making new friends. And we got to do I think we did two preseason podcasts with the extra inch over the years. It was a really good time. Like, those guys are awesome. Nathan's great. Barty's great. Wendy obviously is great. Even if they're all extremely bald except for Barty.
Hey,
but no, they're great dudes, and I think that's like probably the best part of, like I said, being a Spurs fan, the friends you've made. But like, I think making friends with those people through the podcast was a real high. I think the two podcasts, the podcast that really sticks out for me is the one we recorded when we made the Champions League final.
Yeah.
Which was just such a unalloyed,
well, I think we were all going into that semi-final thinking like, okay, are we gonna?
I was pretty confident going into the semi-final. Yeah. I was less confident going into the second leg.
That's what I mean, into the second leg, right? We're behind. You're thinking, okay, this is the end of the journey. Brace yourself. We gone pretty far. Right? The season's not been great.
I kept remembering. I happened to be in Spain when Madrid got knocked out by Ajax, and I was watching. Like, I had the TV on in our hotel room that night in Ronda, watching like I don't speak a lick of Spanish, but it was still like really funny watching these like ex-Madrid players being very angry and scolding the team. And I had a little bit in the back of my head, but I still it was such an improbable thing. It was such a joyous, like, in a lot of ways, the last, just like, as fun as the Europa League final was, there was just that like morass of shit we all had to watch. We don't have to litigate it, but like it was not a fun couple months of football leading up to that. Whereas even though the league was kind of dire, even though the league was kind of ugly to watch in a way leading up to that Champions League final, there were just like, those Champions League matches, like leading up to it, the City games, the Ajax games. I think Dortmund was that, I think, before we played City. It was just such a great series of matches. And it was such a, like, I don't know. There's very few times in my life have I felt like I did when we got to the Champions League final, and just being able to like celebrate that with those guys and do that show. And it was such a satisfying experience. And, it's all been downhill since. But
well, we had a minor hill,
Yeah, no, that was obviously great. But I think the downside is, I think it's hard doing weekly content about a soccer team, any sports team. Well,
I was listening back to some of your old pods, and some of it I was so jealous of, because you were describing I can't remember which pod this was, a routine 2-0 win.
Yeah, I remember those.
I think Michael Cayley said something like, "Well, what do you say about that game?" I'm like, "Oh my god, it's like hitting like crack right now."
It was so good, man. We didn't know how good we had it. It was like one of the best eras of any sports team I've ever followed. Was
and you covered it.
We podcasted through all of it. Yeah,
10 years from you. I think we were talking earlier, from Sherwood through to, well, in the end, Bilbao.
End of Ange.
Yeah,
end of Ange. Yeah. It was crazy. But it's tough, especially when things aren't going well, because like I have a weird approach to sports where if you watch a game with me, I can be really negative very quickly. And I was definitely like, if you've been to Flannery's during the year after Harry Kane's interview with Gary Neville, Flannery's is a Spurs bar in New York. You've definitely heard me boo Harry Kane. I am like, can get really negative really fast during a game, but I try to be a lot more positive, like in a macro sense, like, and I don't know what kind of coping mechanism that is. So there's a lot of like, you're trying to talk yourself into how Mourinho would work. You're trying to talk yourself into how Nuno would work. You're trying to talk yourself into like, Conte is not going to have a fucking mental breakdown after like Southampton. Like, you're trying to keep yourself a little sane. And I feel like I would a lot of times like try to look on the sunny side of things. And it was just, especially since 2020, it was just like, it did get to be a bit of a grind. And then, you throw COVID in there and that doesn't make it easier, but it's just been that was like the low point. It was just, not low point, like the hardest thing about doing the podcast was just like, to some degree, talking about every week, like you said, like, what do you say about a 2-0 win? But like, really the hard thing is like, things aren't going well. You don't feel like they're going to go well. Think about it. Since the Champions League final, I would say there's been like totally positive moments of being a Spurs fan since the Champions League final were those 6 months under Conte when he got here.
Yep.
The first 2 months of Ange, and like the day of the Europa League final, or 3 months of Ange, whatever the first stretch of game until the Chelsea game that we like everyone clapped him off for playing with like 15 guys on the halfway line or whatever it was.
I'd throw Mourinho in there. Like there was a little bit that Mourinho period, just a little bit. Like when he came in, especially like that COVID season, like we were hitting teams on the break and actually picking up points.
It wasn't dire, but
kind of rough.
It was. I remember trying to talk myself into it. And I remember thinking I think we said it on the podcast. Like, it's probably really fun being on a team where Mourinho's pissing out of the 10 as opposed to pissing in.
Yeah.
But it was just sort of like, I remember there was like, I don't know. I guess because Mourinho's Mourinho, and there's that relationship with Spurs fans, and the fact he's generally kind of a shitbag. And then there was like the skepticism of like, is this guy really going to work? It was like we went into that. I think it was against Arsenal, where it was like our Spurs title contenders. Maybe it was City. I can't remember who it was, but we went in like first, or we could have been in first, and then like it was just like downhill after that. And then there was just, I remember that period too. Was like everyone was arguing about Ndombele, and like there was just, there was all the poach stuff, which like. I don't know. I don't count that period. I understand if you do, but
I'm on the fence with it. I'm clutching at straws here because it's scraping the bottom of the barrel for periods where you could say, okay.
certainly I would trade now for this,
Yeah.
for that rather. But it's not been fun, and and I don't think I was consciously like sitting there lying to myself about it. It's like you're just trying to take the positive view of it, and there were times where you knew, like Nuno is one I remember in particular, where you're just trying to talk yourself into how could this go well, and you just know that like this probably isn't going to go great, and like to me, I remember the Conte's second season being really rough because you just felt from Jump Street like this isn't going well. This is like, I mean, they were in third when he quit, but it was still like, oh, this is awful. This isn't flowing.
There was a direction of travel. There was stuff happening under the hood there. Plus,
yeah, he seemed unhappy.
He had so many off the field things in his personal life as well that I mean, it ruined my experience that his friend died. But it was just like this weird vibe around the club in general. So yeah, I totally get it. I was just thinking back to your comment about trying to stay positive, and there definitely is that private versus public persona thing for a podcaster, because I'm the same. Like, you get me in the bar and I'm like screaming C words at the players, you know, it's not good enough, you don't play for the shirt, and then you put behind the microphone and I'm like, okay, I'm talking to several hundred people here.
Yeah, and it's not like you're making a conscious decision of like, I'm going to lie to these people. I mean, Ben was always a little more blunt, for lack of a better term, about how we were playing. I think he would try to find the sunny side, but he would always get a little more down on the team than I was. Brian could too, but it was just, you know, it's just like, God, it's been a rough couple of years. And I think that was the tough part. And it got, like I said, there were times where it was tough when the team was doing well, and it was just like, you know, trying to find something to talk about sometimes, and especially when things were just sort of, like you said, the direction of travel was in a certain going a certain way. It just got, you know, it was just tiresome after a while. And then just the mechanics of running a podcast, it became, you know, it's like, you know, you're herding cats, you're trying to get your people on, and you're trying to schedule everything. Like, that was just, it got like, you know, especially as all of our lives got more complicated for one reason or another, it just became, you know, that was also a low. But really just to be able to spend time with friends, make new friends, and then, like, you know, be able to sort of really, when things were going great, like really share in it with, you know, your friends, and really have that venue to like talk about it.
And you spanned that period of time as well with the rise of the kind of Spurs YouTuber. So when you talk about trying to be not positive but not negative, you know, like you don't want to be happy clapper, toxic positivity, all that, you know, buzzwords. But at the same time, you've got, you know, when you start, you're up against maybe the negativity would be like the cranky old dudes, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
But then you transition into this period where all of a sudden, like 2017, 2018, you like reaction and fan channels start picking up like exponentially.
What was the first like wannabe Arsenal fan TV for Spurs? Was it like
that was Barnaby on Spurred On, probably.
Spurred On. That was
I had him on the show a few months ago. Nice guy.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
okay,
nice
I
guy.
missed that.
He's got great stories. His stories are amazing about it.
It's crazy because you would watch, and I'm not going to necessarily single him out, but you watch some of these YouTubers and you just like, you watch it and you think like, are you even a Spurs fan? Like, not because of the opinion. It's just the affect was so.
Well, rumors are that some of them aren't, but I won't name names.
I wouldn't be shocked. Like, you know, because it felt a lot of it felt, and I think a lot of it's like, very performative. Yeah. And I don't enjoy that sort of, a lot of that front facing content that is sort of the next evolution of that sort of thing. Like, there's a lot of like tacticos who I actually really like their opinions, but I just like, there's just this like ugly fucking green screen behind them, and they have this like, there's this sort of front facing video affect that I just like, I'm just like, man, could you just write a blog or something? Or like get on a podcast and talk to John McKenzie or someone about this. Like, because it's not for me. I'm an old man at this point. So,
yeah, I mean, I made a conscious decision to not really cover them as much as audio pods, mostly because of like, I work a desk job, and that's my boss hates it when I sit there and watch We Are Tottenham TV instead of playing with Excel files. But yeah, it's just I'm 40 years old, and the content isn't for me. It's for somebody else, and you know, they're making great shakes at it. So good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, wonderful pod. I mean, you like we said, we stretched the period of time up to Bilbao, and of course, you came back from a hiatus to record something. How did that feel?
It felt great. We never meant to stop the pod. We kind of stopped it at a certain point. like our lives have all just became more complicated for various reasons. Some of it's just as simple as like different interests. I had a kid, which made like my flexibility was just off, especially when like I would say 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, I have a 5-year, he's 5 now, but like now he's relatively like I had to step away for a minute, but he's going to sleep. But like when he was 1 or 2, it was like a little tricky to do the podcast sometimes because I would have to stop and get in, or I couldn't start because he was upset. So that was like one of the things. And then just like, like Ben got really into like movies, which meant he was out a lot more, like going to see movies after COVID. And then like, frankly, I'll tell you, like, it's just, this team got fucking hard to talk about. Like there's 5 years. I think if it was like Pochettino, maybe we'd still be doing it. Because I do think part of it is we all had all these other things going on. We all had more to do at our jobs. We had more responsibility. So it wasn't like we could stay up till 1 a.m. drinking with each other all the time on a weeknight.
And 10 years is a long time. I mean,
yeah, it is.
I'm sure
and
you could have
great.
kept going. I was talking to Flav about the Fighting Cock on here like ages ago, and I compared the length of that show to like when it was technically on the air longer than Friends.
That's crazy,
right?
Yeah.
And so for 10 years, you think about you've got more seasons than The Wire, and maybe slightly more culturally impactful.
Yeah, definitely. But both from Baltimore, which is the important thing. Yeah, it was. I think it was just a mix of the two things. Like we got busier. We each had stuff that like was, demanding our time and energy, and it was harder to get in sync because we're not like, if you're just going to go. I guess Michael and I, when Michael, and even then, when Michael was on the podcast, he was in New York, I was in Baltimore, Ben was in Atlanta, Brian was in Miami, or on a go boat, transporting cocaine from the Caribbean.
On the slopes, yeah.
Exactly, on the slopes. But we're never in the same place. And I think that was actually one really cool thing. I forgot to mention this, sorry, earlier. One of the big highs was we all got together to watch Champions League final together. Brian and Ben flew up to New York. And like there's a photo of us somewhere, of us all like arms around each other about to watch us take on Liverpool, and we're going to get lucky today. And fuck. And it was still nice, like commiserating with them. Like we were singing the "Oh What a Night" in our friend Vince's backyard. I mean, it was nice. But it was just a mix of our time constraints became more difficult. And then just frankly, this team is just, it's a fucking chore to talk about. Oh man. And that was before, like I honestly had some hope that as the season went on, some form of maybe with new people, I don't know. I thought we might be able to revive the podcast, but it got so ugly so quick that it was just like, who wants? I remember thinking like, I don't want to fucking sit down and think about this and talk about it once a week. Like,
I can't believe there's been about. I mean, I've stopped counting recently, but I at one point I was like, there's been 5 new podcasts or YouTube channels since that I picked up on since January. What are you doing?
I don't like the thing that I think is really underrated among Spurs fans. And it was honestly the reason I wanted Ange to go, even after Bilbao, was I think there was a lot of psychic damage done by just like punting on the league for half a year. And then I think it ate into this season. I mean, I think Thomas Frank is a bad coach in the front office, signed a lot of bad players is the bigger reason. But this team has been fucking unwatchable in the league for like a calendar year, like over a calendar year at this point.
Yep.
And it was just like, even when I remember, because we sort of just stopped podcasting because we couldn't take it anymore. And it just got too hard to like get us all in the same room to talk about this shit. We stopped doing it, I want to say, in like, it was I remember the period. It was like, there was a period last year in January where we thought like all the players were starting to come back. Like Madison was getting healthy and Solanke, like all these players were coming off the injury list. And we were like, okay, once they get back, it's going to start to look a little bit better. And it didn't. Like we scraped by AZ in the Europa League. We just were not performing in the league. And I just was like, that's where we were just like, fuck it. We can't, it's not worth the trouble and whatever. And I think we all knew we had to get back for the Bilbao final. I mean, we've been doing this for however many years. Let's fucking talk about
it. If you can't talk about that, what can you talk about, right?
It was great. Yeah. It was absolutely great. And even then we had to talk about like this fucking Ange going to stick around. And it's like, who cares? But I thought we might be able to, in some form or fashion, get the podcast going again this year. But like, it just got so ugly so quick that it was like, like just who wants to fucking
come back and complain? Yeah, no.
Yeah. And it's also, it was this way under Poach, which I mean, that Kaylee quote that you just brought up, like, what do you say about another great 2-0 win? It's like, what do you say about another shitty 1-1 draw or another
2-1 defeat, or Christian
or even,
Romero
like,
red card that shouldn't have been a red card, or
exactly, or even a 2-1 victory that probably shouldn't have been a victory if we're all being honest with ourselves. And it's like, what do you say about it? And it's like, sort of, I know that, and it's the thing that I think really, like, relegation's probably fair, and it's part of the English game, and that's great, and like, it's part of the culture. But like, one of the things that I learned when I was rooting for bad teams is, like, you just modulate your interest. Like, if the Orioles are on a playoff run, I am fucking dialed in. I will watch every second. I will talk to you about it. If they're like out of it by May, like, yeah, am I going to be watching a lot of games in August? Probably not. Like, I'll jump in here and there. I'll be vaguely abreast of everything. I might still even listen to some podcasts, but that's how I kind of feel about Spurs. And I kind of resent that I can't just totally tune them out. Like, I resent that they have gotten themselves into this level of trouble. And I don't blame relegation. I blame them.
yeah, you got to keep an eye on them. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I was
God,
sat at my desk today looking at the scores of
Yes.
Nottingham Forest and West Ham and getting really upset.
Yep. And I hate that it, like, it just, like, overwhelms you, and you're like, are you fucking serious?
I mean,
Like,
I've got this working theory that Spurs fans have just been pushed beyond their limit of what they're used to experiencing so far that we've broken. You mentioned Daniel Levy. I can't remember if this was before we recorded or on the recording. Would have sacked Frank ages ago. Like, there were all these points where you'd say, okay, this is going to happen. Oh, it didn't happen. Oh, okay, now it's January and we just lost to West Ham. Surely now he has to go. No.
I'd argue it's been a whole year of this.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
it's like we kept thinking.
And back in January, you could.
Yeah, and I'm not. I love relitigating Ange. All my friends will tell you this, but but I'm not trying. But it's like, I'm not saying it's trash him. I mean, I'm saying it a little bit to trash him, but not really. But it's like, aside from the Europa League final, which is a very big aside, because Ange did a really good job figuring that one out, and it went really well, and it did finally work out for us. But like, you just kept waiting for things to turn around since, I would say, December of 24, January of 25. You've been waiting for, like, it's going to stop sucking. So
yeah, when we replaced Fraser Forster with Kinski, I would say it was like a turning point. Like, okay,
it felt like it should have been.
Yeah.
And it just never, it's like, it's never, you keep waiting for this team to get their shit together, and it just keeps not happening. Like, and it's like, and in big and small ways. And it's just like, we've all been sort of pushed beyond.
Yeah.
And it's like funny, because you look at, like, again, it's like why I have a hard time talking about these change for Tottenham people, because it's like, they were talking the exact same way like 2 years ago that they are now. It's just like, it's just sort of like, we have no capacity. Like, our ability for outrage is exhausted almost. And it's just like, how did we get to this point? It's just rough. It's rough. It's rough business. And I was hoping that, like, Thomas Frank would get us into be like a passable defensive side with some good counter.
We'll finish 8th or something,
Yeah, maybe like you feel kind of good about what he's done with Kudus at the end of the year or whatever. I thought it would be that, and then I thought, like, maybe we can, like, get the podcast going again when this team isn't, like, wearing on our every nerve. But it's like, it's been really, like, ever since the Champions League final, it's just been like, they've just been frustrating to watch, and nobody seems to understand, like, the enormity of the task in front of them, from the front office to the managers. And the managers, I want to use this as an opportunity. This is total side, but since I'm on, I don't know how often I'll be podcasting. I get really mad about these managers and the way they talk about Tottenham, even when they're right. Like, everyone points at Conte and they're like, "Oh, Conte was right," and I just get really frustrated, because I'm like, you're the fucking manager. Like, it is your job to, like, try to fix this. At a minimum, it's your job not to fucking talk about it while you're employed by the club, which I will give Ange credit for. He understood the assignment when he was paid by the club. Like, I didn't love it when he was teeing off on us on Gary Neville's podcast, but, like, we don't pay him anymore. So what? I mean, I don't think we pay him anymore. But anyway, my point is, it's like, when you're here, it is your job to fucking fix it. And, like, you're just as much a part of the problem as Daniel Levy or fucking Jed Spence or whatever player you want to scapegoat that week. Like, and I just get so mad when it's just, like that's what I was saying earlier, when, like, you hear this, like, oh, Thomas Frank will be fine, it's just Tottenham. No, fuck Thomas Frank. Like, no manager has done this with us since, like, in 25 years. Like, he is absolutely has a large share of the blame. Players too. I'm happy to, like, we don't, like, I was thinking that watching the Fulham game last week. It's like I think in our, like, pseudo intellectual bubbles on like social media, sometimes we try to think of this in terms of like labor and management. And traditionally, I think if you go back in the ages with all sports, like front offices didn't get enough blame for this kind of stuff. So now we over egg it. And it's almost, there's a sense of like, all these poor players are trapped in this cycle. And it's like, well, yeah, to a degree, but also like, I watch like these, fucking Paulinho slide tackle a non-existent ball, like player with the ball. It's just like, no, fuck these guys too. Like, cause they could be playing better. Like, yeah, they're probably in a situation where they're not going to win anything, but they could also fucking like not be in a fucking relegation battle.
I'm pretty player defensive, but yeah, it's been rough.
Generally I am, but this year I'm not. Like,
I mean, I don't go in for a lot of the behavioral analysis because I remember Jan Vertonghen getting it years ago, and anybody trying to analyze Mickey van der Ven right now has got to remember that he is on a dysfunctional team. It probably isn't fucking fun to lose every week,
It's not. And I have a lot of sympathy for the situation there. Yeah. He's a good player, but there's also an element of me which is like,
do your job.
I don't want to hear Christian. I don't want to hear. I'm going to pick on Christian Romero. I don't want to hear Christian Romero complaining about this team when he got his dumbass sent off for 4 weeks. Like I think we would have picked up some points if he. I think we might have beaten Fulham if he'd been on the pitch because he might have scored a goal.
But might have organized that defense.
Yeah, it's just like it's not. It's everyone. It's that's what it takes for this shit to happen. So, God, sorry, I'm just fucking.
And you were saying, what do you talk about? What do you talk about when things are bad?
Oh.
Also, folks, I got chills down my spine as I got to see a skipjack rant live in person.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Talk about the Orioles, professional wrestling. We're hitting all the checking all the boxes tonight.
I did my homework. I've been as a Wheeler Dealer Radio super fan.
There we go. I love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see you guys come back. I'm glad you got that moment to celebrate the win. And
we deserved it. We deserved it. We did talk through a lot of bad football, and it's fun to talk about that with your friends.
It's if that's the last episode, it was a real nice capstone on
I thought
having
about
that
it at
moment.
The time. I thought about making it that explicit at the time, and I was like, maybe we'll figure it out. And maybe we will one day, but we haven't done it yet.
So looking back on your time at the helm of Wheeler Dealer Radio, I jokingly mentioned earlier about your cultural impact being greater than that of The Wire, but I do think that yourself and also the pod must have had some impact on the wider culture. I mean, you're in small ways, your Tom Carroll Christmas carols and cocaine binges.
The Tom Carroll thing. Apparently,
American,
I always thought it was
being an American podcast of notoriety. I mean, I think people knew Wheeler Dealer Radio, even if it was for good or for bad.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, and we never had a great feel for that because we didn't. It was so much about like especially we were really tied into Cartilage Free Captain at first, and then I think we just weren't writing for the site as much because, for a variety of reasons. I think mostly it had to do with we couldn't do it while we were at work anymore. Like we all kind of got better jobs, and we couldn't just do it at work anymore, which is certainly how I started contributing and writing things about Tom Carroll that I'm reasonably certain people have teased them about over the years. Someone sent me a post once when Tom Carroll signed for Swansea. There was like a guy who posted on the Swansea board, was like, "What's this I hear about Tom Carroll having a cocaine addiction?" It's like, yeah, I did it.
See, Mom, I told you I could make something.
Yeah, I wrote, for those who don't know, I wrote a bizarre article called "Sex, Drugs, and Through Balls," which was with the idea that like Tom Carroll was like, Russell Brand and kissing or forgetting Sarah Marshall, where he was just this drug-addled lunatic pissing off Panamanian drug lords and stuff. It was a very colorful article.
And now it's been absorbed by ChatGPT, so you could probably
exactly. Yeah. Oh, fingers crossed. I hadn't even thought of that. I don't know. It was always because it really became as we got a little less tied in with the site because we were just doing our own thing, and then we just weren't contributing to the site anymore, which wasn't a decision. Like I said, it just happened. I never had a great set. Like I would see our numbers, but we would just I would sort of put out a tweet every week. We did posts for a long time on the site, and then we sort of stopped. And it kind of worked out when SB Nation tried to control all the podcasts, and we were like, "Nah, we're not doing that." Yeah.
If you're going to do
full
that,
blessing of Dustin, by the way. yeah, Dustin with a full blessing. They tried to pay us at one point, and it was just kind of like, I don't want to jump through your hoop, which is dumb. Like we never made any money off the thing, but. And it was with Dustin's full blessing that we he was very cooperative and helpful throughout the years, but even though we never had him on, it was I don't know. I never had a good sense of the impact. Like I would hear that like Windy would periodically, when people asked him for his favorite Spurs podcast, he would always mention us.
Yeah.
We'd pop up occasionally. We'd show up on like the Extra Inch Discord where people had much stronger opinions about us than I would realize. Like a lot of people didn't like me. A lot of people thought our Harry Kane impression, which we stopped doing, was I don't know if ableist is the right word. I feel like it's become a joke on Bluesky, but like unkind, let's say, which it probably was to an extent, but
his gaping
it
maw,
was just,
is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It was always, I never had a real great sense for, I mean, clearly people listen to us, but I never had a great sense for like what our broader impact was. I mean, I think the most surreal moment was Ben and I went, when I was visiting him once, we went to an Atlanta Spurs meetup for a game, and I was like ordering a beer and some food. And for some reason, I was talking to the bartender for like more than a minute, and this guy was like, "You do a podcast, don't you?" And he like because he just recognized my voice. So yeah, that was like the weird thing. And occasionally, you just meet people who like I'm friends with the guy, a columnist for the Baltimore Banner. He used to work with the Sun, who's like the Orioles beat guy, who found us because he heard like someone who listened to us told him, was like, "Oh yeah, there's a Baltimore guy who does a Spurs podcast and he complains about Larry Hogan all the time." That's how he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll listen to that." So I would meet people, but I never had a great sense for like what our impact was, because we just did our own thing. We really just did our own thing for us, and there beyond the Extra Inch guys, there wasn't like a huge level of engagement. I mean, beyond what we did on social media, where we certainly talked to a lot of people.
I don't remember there being a lot of crossovers in general until like maybe the last few years. So
it
for
was
you
like
popping
during
up on
COVID.
another pod, it seemed rare. Well, I remember thinking
very
at the
rare.
time.
Yeah.
Other than it was like Fighting Cock and Rule the Roost, but they like all of those kind of sprouted out of the Fighting Cock, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And a lot of those guys know each other socially too, I think.
Exactly.
But like there's some, like I know like some of the guys from Tottenham Depot through the Baltimore connection, and like there's a few of them, but yeah, we just kind of stuck to our lane. And like I said, I mean, really the Extra Inch thing was like Windy liked us, so we were kind of became friends through that. But yeah, it was, we kind of kept in our cartilage-free ecosystem, especially like I want to say in the mid 2010s. That was when we had a lot of our like sort of friends on. Like Kim would come on sometimes, and Vince and Rob was on the show for a while, and Willie, our friend Willie. These are all guys who did stuff for Cartilage Free Captain. So it was a real like Cartilage Free Captain. But then we had Nathan on as our third at one point, like in 2019, I think, and. Like, so we would have odd people on occasionally. Nathan from the Extra Inch.
It's tough to get folks from the UK if you're in the US, because the time
it is tricky. That was always tricky, especially once I had a kid. Then it was like
that's what
I would tell my wife, "Can you please watch my child while I podcast about Spurs with some friends in England?" So.
I get people asking me on, and they're like, "Oh, can you do 2:00 on a Tuesday?" I'm like, no, dude.
No. At least during COVID, there was a period where it was like, you do this in the middle of the day. It's like, yeah, I can actually.
When I had work from home, my lunches happened to coincide with a phone call. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think. I think as a podcaster, it's important to not pay attention to the numbers and the impact too much while you're doing it. Because you get in your head and you're like, oh my god, the numbers
thing would. Yeah, the numbers thing I paid a little too, which is weird because we never advertised. We never really did a ton of outreach.
I blur my eyes when I open it up in Spotify for creators. I just kind of I unfocus and then I click the button where I know it is.
Smart. That's real smart.
People ask me, I'm like, I have no idea. I don't care.
But it was like really frustrating when you notice that like little bleed of like, because like it's like, oh fucking we haven't won a game in 2 months or whatever. It's like. But we got some, it would be funny because we get weird feedback. Like we got this we got this one review once, which was like really negative about our relatively left-wing politics, especially Ben, who's like, is like, oh, these communists, like the most dangerous ideology in like the history of the world. And like, which I always thought was funny, because I think we were all pretty upfront about where we were politically. And I think you expect young people on the internet, well, young-ish people,
young soccer fans especially,
to have a certain type of politics, but also like our like logo was like logo for the podcast was a photoshopped statue of Stalin with Chirpy's head on it.
Yeah.
So we weren't like that wasn't like our deal, and it would.
Whose handle was
I find
Comrade You Spurs? I feel.
Ben. That's Ben.
There you go.
He adopted that. He used to be Lenin's eyebrow.
Yeah, that's why I was getting confused because I had him in my head as Lennon's eyebrow.
Yeah, he used to be Lenin's eyebrow, and at some point he like switched it over. Some point after Bernie Sanders became a thing, he switched over to Comrade You Spurs.
My God, we really are going back in time, aren't we?
Yeah, no, tell me about it. Think about how long ago that was.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but yeah, it's a real strange existence, and it's a real strange existence.
All right, I'm going to finish off with 2 questions.
Yeah, sure.
First one is, why do you think there are so many Spurs podcasts? What is it about this club that means that we have over 100?
I think it's a team there's a lot to talk about. They've always been in an interesting spot because they're in an interesting. They've been a very upwardly mobile club for 25 years until like the last 2 or 3 years.
Downwardly
They've been
mobile.
a very and they've had a lot of really interesting players, and I think they occupy a really unique place in English, or at least maybe even the world's football landscape, and that like they're this kind of, again, until the last few years, they were this really upwardly mobile club that did it without without this weird, like without petrodollars, without a huge investment. And so I think they're really interesting. And I think they've also just there's been like a world-class player until like this year, arguably.
Yeah.
There's been a world-class player on Spurs since like 2008, whenever we signed Luka Modric, or Gareth Bale, I guess, depending on which one we signed first. I can't remember. I mean, we've had really interesting players. I think they're not a glory hunting team is part of it. I think that's why a lot of people glom onto it. I think there's just a lot to discuss, and I think it's a little harder when you're at least a United or now City, where it's just like, oh, did you win the title? Like, it's like I can only imagine what a United podcast has been like for. I talk about how hard it is to do a Spurs podcast, but compared to their expectations for themselves, which we would all like bite their hand off to have the trophy haul they've had in the last 15 years, but like, they're all ready to kill each other. So, because I think there is like, and I think that's something that's challenged Spurs fans over the last couple of years, is like, you get to a point where like what you want to see happen, that like the range of acceptable outcomes shrinks because you expect a certain level of success, and the frustration when not winning a trophy kind of boil over. But I think we're an interesting club to talk about because we're in an interesting place, and we've had interesting players too. I think that's the other thing. That's the best I've got, because it's actually funny. I never really thought about it. There aren't as many, I guess, American Spurs podcasts as you might think.
Yeah, I think of Kois R Us, Stateside Spurs, Tottenham Depot. You could say like half of Dr. Tottenham.
Yeah.
I'm probably missing a couple, and I apologize. Oh, Wicked Spursy, friends of the show.
Yeah, and it's like, but there's so many, and especially now with like all the journalist-based, podcasts, it's just, I think it's just, they're in an interesting place, and there's a lot to talk about. Yeah. So, or it's easy to just have discussions about, as opposed to, I guess Arsenal arguably would have been in a similar place until fairly recently. They've been in a lot of transition and post Wenger. I mean, obviously they had a very toxic sort of fan culture going back into the 2010s, which we kind of have now. When you don't live up to expectations,
and I imagine they're talking about us as much as we're talking about them. Like, you listen to Spurs pods, and 25% of an episode might be complaining about Arsenal running away with the league, and I'm sure it's the same thing. Turn it around on its head. I'm sure they're like laughing at whatever happened with us.
I mean, I remember talking to an Arsenal fan right before the Champions League final, and it was after they'd lost the Europa League final, and this guy was like, you can't win. It'll be the worst weekend of my life if you guys win. So there is a certain level of that, but we are frequently not threatening them. And I mean, we were for a couple of years there, but
God, it was good.
It was great. Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's actually funny now that I think about it. I don't know what the comparative like universe of like Chelsea podcasts is like, or I don't know how we compare to them in terms of volume or quality, but
I think they're more concentrated at the top. So I think they have fewer pods which like get big numbers, based upon the little data I've seen, which I don't really trust.
That sounds like, I would imagine, from what little I can about, that sounds like probably what Arsenal's like.
They're very well serviced by the general journalist pods.
Well, you mean how every fucking journalist is an Arsenal or Liverpool
Yeah,
fan?
exactly. I think that's probably part of it. But I plan on doing the analysis at some point, but I just don't know the words to look for the same way I do with Spurs.
I would imagine there's like a concentration of incredibly annoying American Liverpool podcasts.
Yeah.
Given the American Liverpool fans that I know, they all seem like they would podcast.
I mean, I did it
derogatory.
I did it
and then,
briefly for the Europa League final. I listened to Man United pods to see what they were saying, and they were just I'm like, oh my god, why are there so few?
Well, that might be attrition. That might be. I mean, God, I mean they haven't maybe quite hit the lows that we have, but like, it's been a rough few years to be a Man United fan. That's a perch to fall from.
Oh, those poor children. And last question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I was insulting my guest there, but yeah, any advice for aspiring podcasters?
Prepare, but don't prepare too much.
Yeah.
It's good. We actually got a lot. There was a period where I started doing a little bit more prep work, and it was helpful. But don't like you want it to feel like I think you want a podcast to feel like a conversation at the bar. You want it to like you want to follow where it goes, and it's going to ebb and flow, and be prepared to follow that. I probably could have been better prepared over the years. Do it with people you enjoy. I can't imagine doing the podcast with people that I didn't like. I mean, that was the whole reason I would do it every week was, talk to my friends, have drinks. I don't know how evident it was. I mean, you listened to me all those years. You re-listened to some for this podcast, I think. I mean, we would get progressively drunker as the podcast went on because we would start drinking wine or beers. Like sometimes there were a few times, I don't know if I did it, but I could tell with Brian or Ben if they'd been indulging during the podcast. Like by the end, there were some, not all, there was some podcast where you could just tell it was like, oh man, that we need to wrap this up. Like these answers are getting way less intelligible. But
I miss that era of
fun.
podcasting, if I'm honest, because you don't really see it as often anymore. People drinking through a pod. I can think of a handful, but it's not really.
Part of it is, and we didn't make a point of it.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell you, my biggest pet peeve with any podcast of any genre is what are you drinking tonight? Like, and that has become less prominent as no one drinks beer anymore. But like, certainly when we started, that was like every fucking sports podcast was about like what like fucking like micro brew IPA, that's like 8.6% alcohol. Like, are you drinking? And they would go through what fucking hops there were. It used to drive me insane. But we always looked at it. I mean, for me, it's funny because when it comes to drinking, period, it's a social lubricant for me. Like if I'm sitting at home by myself, I'm just not going to have a drink. But if I'm like, I was drinking some wine while we were talking. If I go out, I'll meet my friends out at a bar. I'll drink. But
I'd recommend everybody drinks when they talk to me. So I'm glad you were.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. But it was like, it was a social. My point is, it was like a social occasion for me. And I think that the best advice, you will enjoy it more. You will look forward to it more. You will be better at sticking with it if these are people that you are either friends with or become friends, or are going to be friends with. You don't necessarily have to do it with your friends.
I mean, I hear a lot of, especially the YouTube space, where they invite people on who've never chatted before. And it's like a bunch of people talking over each other and
Tactico
arguing.
stuff is so bad for that, and it's like these people. It's not that these people aren't smart or have good analysis. Some of them are very good on camera.
Just a bunch of nerds in a room.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just, you can tell they're not used to like talking about this stuff, and it just gets like there's a lot of tactical analysis, not from everyone. Like there's some, I like some of the some of the Lily White Lab people, which is not, I'm not trying to denigrate them, but some of them are better on camera than others. But like sometimes it's just like I'm sure you have a great point about what Igor Tudor's best formation could be with this team, but like, oh my God, like I can't, like I think you're an AI bot. I can't listen to this. Like please write it down or present me with a transcript. So it's helpful. Like the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get.
Yes, definitely.
I would recommend, I know this is no way to monetize your podcast, but certainly until you gain an audience, don't like do this. We're looking at each other, but don't publish that like until you are comfortable. Because I think there is some real value. Like I would just like lean back in my chair with my headphones in while I like drank some wine or whatever. It was like, because I was more relaxed that way.
Yep.
You want to be focused, but Like, you want it to be friendly, you want it to feel natural. And I think like there's certain things like, again, I'm an old man, so I don't love like watching my podcasts on. I mean, I do it sometimes, but it's more on in the background. Like, do it without that until like the Extra Inch started doing it, which makes sense because that's like they're trying to monetize it. They're trying to do certain things. I get it. Like, that's how people consume content. But like, until you get to the point where you have that comfort, like, don't do that stuff. Like, focus on making good conversations with people that people want to listen to. And I thought we did a fairly good job of that. And it's weird because there's a line where we had a lot of in jokes, and I'm sure we crossed that line eventually, and we weren't trying to make money or anything, so who gives a shit? But
I mean, like Eric Dyer being a caveman / avant-garde movie.
Yes. Eric Dyer used to love watching French New Wave cinema.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you scared of fire.
And we just call that back for years. But it's funny because in some ways people can see that as being like very exclusive. Like, you're not inviting the audience in. But on the other hand, I think by the end, even if you didn't get all of our references or jokes, like, you got a sense that you were like listening in on some guys having a good time. And I'd like to think that our insights were decent enough and our conversation was fun enough that would take you along for the ride, and you'd either figure it out or just roll with it or whatever. And again, it's like, if I'm giving any advice, it's like you want to have an inviting sort of fun conversation that people want to listen to. And that's not always, you don't always have to lay everything out for everyone, but you prioritize that before you prioritize anything else. Like, you want to have a good vibe with people and you want to make the conversation fun. And then once you get established and like comfortable with that, and once you sort of have that rapport with your guests, then you can focus on like promotion and filming shit and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Don't run before you can walk.
Yeah. It's a good, I think all successful, unless you're talking about like, like Serial or something, like a journalistic podcast. Like, it's a conversation you want to listen to. And with sports, it's a conversation that should be fun to listen to.
Should be. Well, I'm mindful of time because I've eaten up quite a bit of your evening. Thank you for chatting with me. As I said earlier, it's a bit weird. It's having listened to your voice for like
oh, there you go. There you go.
Do appreciate it. Ticked you off my bucket list. Meet Skipjack.
Yeah, glad. I'm happy to help. It's nice to be podcasting again. I really, it's been about a year actually. God, it's been about a year. Yeah. So it's nice to be back. I do miss it in certain regards, but like I said, the Spurs performance doesn't make me super eager to jump back in. Maybe next year, hopefully when we survive and Pochettino is leading us to Conference League glory in a year or two, maybe we'll change our minds. But yeah,
or the playoffs, one of the two.
Oh, fuck off, God.
Well, thank you again. Do you want to be found online? Where can people find you?
Sure. You can find me. I'm trying to remember the jokes we used to do about this. It's been a while. You can find me at Comrade Uspert. No, you can find me on Bluesky. I'm at Skipjack. I think it's just at Skipjack. Yeah, I don't think I have the number on Bluesky. So yeah, just at Skipjack. I do want to thank all my. I know we're talking about Wheeler Dealer Radio. I'd be remiss if I did not thank Ben, Brian, Michael, Kim. I especially want to thank Kim, who's the one who let us do it in the first place when we just didn't feel like writing anymore. Dustin, Willie, Vince, Rob. I'm probably forgetting some other people we had on over the years. But yeah, I want to thank everyone who did the podcast. It was great. I loved it while we did it. I miss it, but yeah. So yeah, you can find me on Bluesky. You can find me on LinkedIn at Ryan. Ryan too. Ryan's another one that we had on a lot.
Yeah. And so thanks everybody for your time. Keep listening to and making Spurs podcasts, and up the Spurs, come on you Spurs, etc.
Come on you Spurs.
There we go, you did it better than me.